that like half of our job is actually being able to help validate things.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Mutually Human podcast, where we talk about how to make technology more human. My name is Josh Webb, and I'm on the marketing team. We also have Lori Maxson, Director of UX. Lori, say hi to the people.
Hi to the people.
She's like, I don't know.
I was hoping you were going to introduce me as DJ Lori today, Josh.
Oh, well, yeah, you're DJ Lori. She's
Thank
like,
you.
Okay, we also have a senior developer and what we've self-proclaimed as senior side hustler, Aaron Christie. How's it going, Aaron?
It's going well. Lori asked me what I wanted my title to be for this, and I told her professional typer, and she didn't like that idea, so we just went with something more generic.
I mean, if that's what you can mostly do is type, and you should have that as your title. So
I would think so. It's a skill.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, welcome to the podcast. And we also have our fearless leader, Mark Van Holstein, CEO, and I don't know, what else would you call yourself? What's
amazing?
When you introduce yourself to normal people, what do you say you are?
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And amazing CEO of CEOs of Mutually Human. So welcome to the podcast, everybody. We have had technical difficulties this morning, and it's just driving me crazy. But now we're up and going. So welcome to the podcast, Aaron. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Since you're new to the podcast, you're on the Mutually Human team and been with them for a while. So tell us about yourself.
Yeah. So I've been developing for for a very long time, which explains all the gray hair and my kids mostly. But
last week you did not have gray hair.
I did not. It just it was like COVID and then kids and then it's all happened. So I've really enjoyed developing. I've been coding for a very long time. But like seriously, like talking about titles, I always had this made up title for myself, which was always solutioneer, which I think actually fits better with what I do. Because I look at development as a school or as a skill set, but not as the end goal for something. So like for me, like I like to solve a business problem, and I like to find these little niches of things that people are struggling with and actually use the skill to be able to solve it versus, just putting together some code. Like I would never be a person that would sit around doing coding exercises because they don't have an end goal other than just to do a coding exercise, right? I guess it's to make yourself a little bit better, but still, I'd rather do that in a practical way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Mark's like, I didn't know that about you. Really?
Well, Mark knows that.
Yeah, I think we have to trademark solutioneer like Disney's Imagineers.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Welcome to the podcast. You're going to be a great addition. So
we'll see.
What you're talking about is perfect. She's like, maybe. What we're talking about is perfect because today we wanted to talk a little bit about productizing your expertise, which, there's lots of things you can productize. But one pattern I know that we've seen is that when people have a lot of expertise in an area, they're needing to turn that into a product and essentially just package it in a digital way. So to kind of get the conversation going, Mark, can you tell us a little bit about why somebody would even want to productize their expertise and what that kind of means?
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the scenarios is, someone who does a lot of individual one-on-one training, consulting, things like that. And one of the first things that they're going to often hit is that their ability to grow that business is going to be severely hampered by just their available time, right? Like if they're spending time one-on-one teaching people, there's only so many hours in a day. There's only so many days in a week for them to go out and do that, and they're gonna be severely limited in their growth. And so finding ways and opportunities for them to take that knowledge that they have and take that gift of teaching people and really deliver it to the market in a way that's scalable, that they can start reaching far more people than they could do one-on-one, or where they can start reaching people that are not in the same place as them. Is I think a place where they can really start to grow their business in a much more unbounded way.
And the thing I'll add on to what Mark just said is when we think about the people that have some sort of expertise, sometimes that's content that they need to be able to distribute and in some unique way. Sometimes that's a process. And sometimes it's a combination of either of those. So it's not always just people that have they're traveling around giving a speech. Sometimes it is, hey, this is a process that we see that has worked in these organizations, and we want to be able to distribute it to multiple organizations in a scalable way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and not being geographically bounded either is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to get your own information, your own knowledge base out to more people is really key. I know I struggle with this idea. Mark knows this too, but I struggle with this thing that sometimes because I'm shaped by my own experiences. And sometimes I go and I do these things and I'm like, oh yeah, everybody knows this or everybody knows that. And I don't think of the knowledge and the information I've gathered as being important. Or unique in any way. And what I've kind of grown to realize is that not everybody has had the same experiences, obviously. And so having a platform to actually share those things is really key to for growth. So.
Yeah, I've seen that with any kind of thought leadership thing in general, is that the idea that person would know, thinks that they know, they think they're almost bragging. It's like, if I try to go out and say, oh, I'm going to productize, or I'm going to tell people, it's like, I know one person I know that's a ghostwriter would always say, like, how do you, like, I don't have the expertise to write this book. And then he would say, like, no, if you wrote the book, then you have the expertise. Like, that's what tells people, right? Yeah, that you have it. So do you guys keep an ongoing list of business ideas? How many business ideas do you guys keep going at a normal time?
Let's toss this one over to Aaron. Aaron, do you keep an ongoing list of business ideas?
I do. Yeah. So for me, I use Bear app a lot because it just basically it's a markdown editor. It's great.
Yep.
I just throw ideas in when they pop into my head, and I've got some super random ideas I just put down just to amuse myself later. And then I've got some that are like, actually legit that may actually be worth following up on at some point.
My favorite part about Aaron's list is, like he said, it's a wide range, right? Like, he's got the ones that are very serious, and once in a while a product will come out and he'll actually like copy and paste, like, hey, this is really similar to this idea I had. The other, on the other side, they're very humorous and interesting and fun that he can copy and paste into a Slack channel and make us all laugh. So,
yeah, like as an example, Super on a podcast, I always had this idea that sometimes I go to stand-ups and they're kind of boring. So our stand-ups are basically, we all get together. Sometimes we actually all stand up so that we don't let the meeting drag on very long. Have a short meeting to kind of discuss whatever we need to discuss. So development process or a cycle in software development or whatever. But I always thought it'd be fun sometimes just to have something like auto-tuning and all, and then going back and playing it later. And it's just an auto-tune stand-up. It'd be so great.
Auto-tune podcast. Let's make
that
it
one's
happen.
Free. The next one you pay for.
Well, yeah, now it's my idea. I do something kind of similar. I actually switched. I used to have it where I just wrote down my ideas, but I found that my ideas were pretty random, and a lot of times I could find duplicates. And so I've changed to where I start writing down just problems I see. So it's like, as I come across a problem, I'll go, oh man, that's really annoying, and I'll just write it down. And then later I may come up with several solutions to that problem, as a way I'm kind of doing it. So
Josh, sorry, Laura, go ahead.
I was just saying, my list is very self-centered. It's like, if you look at my list of business ideas, it's going to focus all around like a mother with 3 kids, working in the software industry, driving a really cool minivan. Like, all the ideas really focus around that type of person.
Yeah, and Mark's like,
I'm really excited for the driving a cool minivan.
Well,
yeah, I mean, it's true. Like, I mean, I certainly have ideas, but my time to pursue any of them that's not mutually human, and all the work that we do for our clients is pretty limited. So.
Well, Mark, that's actually funny, because I feel like a lot of our clients, when they come to us, they'll have this idea, and as we're talking more about it, like, this conversation always comes up, which is like, how has someone not done this? Like, am I racing someone to get this to the market? And the thing that we always talk about is ideas are cheap. Our ideas are easy, right? It really is putting the time, effort into identifying exactly where that target market is, identifying how you're going to build that product, and then investing in the actual build and in distribution of that product. But yeah, we often have that same conversation. People are always surprised that some ideas aren't pursued, and I don't think it's the lack of no one's had that idea, right? It takes a lot to bring a product to life.
Yeah, I think the same thing goes with collaboration as well, because there's this really great Seth Godin school. If you guys haven't seen it, it's just he basically just recorded a little school they did. It's on a podcast, and one of the things that somebody asked was like, I don't want to share this because somebody might steal my idea. Mm-hmm. And he goes like, well, it doesn't matter, because hardly anybody can execute an idea. Like, the people that execute it are the ones that win. So
yeah, I mean, I hear that all the time of people who are very very nervous of their idea being stolen, and not by us, but by just the world out there before they have it out there, and like to be very secretive and protective of it. And frankly, I think that's probably does more harm than it does good. Like, I think that getting it out there is way more valuable to get it out there and get exposure to it. Because like you said, Josh, not many people actually have the ability or the drive to actually go execute on that idea. And so you really don't need to worry as much about that.
And let's face it, like half of our job is actually being able to help validate things. And if you keep it all to yourself, you're not sharing it with anybody and getting feedback on things you could do to actually improve this idea you have. Because maybe you actually have a really good idea, but you really need to get feedback from people. So
yeah, so if you can auto-tune just that part of the conversation so we can get feedback.
You can auto-tune this whole thing. Yeah. Editing, baby. So so let's bring it back to the productizing your expertise for a second. And Aaron, I'm gonna bring this to you. You created a bunch of products over the years. When someone is thinking about productizing their idea, a lot of times it has to do with the fact that they've limited the scale of their business. They've already hit some kind of cap. They're like, I'm talking to as many people as I can talk to. I'm serving as many people as I can serve. I don't know what else to do. And so that my next best idea would be how to productize that expertise. How does somebody translate their knowledge into something that's actually generating revenue? I know it's a big question, but I'll start with you and kind of bring it to the group. I have knowledge here and I'm trying to translate that to revenue that more people can see. How do I do that?
That's a great question. I guess, so I think you're talking kind of about scalability there, right? Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of times for a lot of the clients that have come to us, they come to us having built a business on something that the product that they actually built it on is not scalable. So typically I shouldn't say typically, a lot of times they come to the table with like, hey, I've got this, Excel spreadsheet that I'm running my business on. And we're like, okay, so I see your problems there. You can't share it with people. You're passing a file around. Like you don't have validation, like all these things, right? So that's where custom software kind of comes into play. And we start formalizing, we don't necessarily take their spreadsheet and then translate it into software as much as we take their business idea, like their spirit of what they're trying to do as a company, and then try to facilitate a actual solution out of that. And so I don't know if that actually answers your question.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I can see exactly what you're talking about in terms of the need. I also know the skepticism that some of the people have had whenever I talk to them about. It's like, okay, well, let's try to make this idea a little more scalable, and then by doing that, they're like, well, other than a book or something like that, how would I make a separate digital business out of this? Yeah. Which is very possible.
A really good example that has been successful is the Dave Ramsey financial peace area. And so if you think about that at the beginning of the business, and I actually don't know the history of it, I'm going to make some assumptions, but my assumption is that he and a small group of people probably did a lot of the traveling around, holding those classes in person, and gathering as a physical group. And then fast forward to today is, now he has tons of facilitators, tons of participants that can participate in those classes, both online and in person. So it's an example of using software to take something that previously was limited by number of people being able to travel and get together with people, that is now just expanded and exploded into something that can touch just tons and tons of people.
Oh yeah, because they have their Financial Peace University, which is essentially them taking their productizing their expertise. But then they also, what's really cool is that they've taken a way to be able to create a budget app out of that, which was a need that everybody had, and they kind of put it all together, which is really helpful. So you can get the education while you're having a tool.
Right.
I was talking to somebody yesterday. Have you guys heard of this guy? I think he goes by the handle of Paraphractic. He has a YouTube channel.
Killer name.
Yeah, killer name. He's got this YouTube channel called Retro Recipes. And what he does is he goes and he restores vintage computer systems. So like old Commodore 64s and TRS-80s and all this kind of stuff, right? And so I think kind of what you're talking about with Dave Ramsey is kind of similar here. Like he has a little bit of a following, because part of this is community building when you've got knowledge, right? So he's got this following on YouTube, and then he moved over to Patreon, which I think if you're an individual and you have some some kind of knowledge where you want to share, Patreon is a place to start, right? He's able to take his content and the information he has and put it behind a paywall. And then, although Patreon used to be known just for podcasting, right? Now it's popular with all kinds of content creators. And so, you have separate, payment plans that you want to do to be able to, for patrons to be able to help out. But because of this, he was able to, you can gain sponsorships for business and hobbies and creative work and all this kind of stuff. And, he's able to grow his community and share his knowledge in a way that he wasn't able to do before. Now, for somebody that's on a larger scale, like you said with Dave Ramsey, you see products start to kind of fall out of that, which I think is really
well.
Cool.
And he's got a pretty giant software development team internally. I think it's something like 30 people or so. So
yeah,
which side knowledge, I think it's hilarious. Anytime I hear him talk about his development team, he's like, yeah, they're working on crazy stuff like Cold Fusion. And if you know anything about it, Cold Fusion is like early 2000s, right? So it's really funny that he has no idea what his developers are probably
doing. He's
cornered
the market in Cold Fusion now, though.
That's that's right. So you bring up a really important thing. So if you just have the knowledge and you're a fairly small business, there are lots of tools out there, right? There's tools for you to be able to sell courses. There's pre-made tools. When does it start to make sense? And Mark, maybe I'll send this over to you. When does it start to make sense to say, I don't think I can use a out of the box tool. It may make sense to get a custom development team involved. When does it make sense to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you should absolutely look at those out of the box tools first, right? I think that's the first place people should look. The first place, they should definitely not look to custom software as their first step, because that's often going to be an expensive and overkill step for as they're getting out the gate. But I think where they start to look at that and change it is, say, they've got some maybe unique experience that they want to bring. So, there's a lot, like you said, there's a lot of tools out there to help bring educational content to people. But, going back to this financial peace example, out of that came this idea for this really sort of unique budgeting tool that he wanted to bring to market. And so that's something that those educational tools are not really going to provide. And that's another way that he can provide the expertise, but needs to really build something special. The other thing I'll say is when you start feeling those same pain points with those out of the box things, right? Aaron mentioned I started with a spreadsheet, and for a while that was fine. And then it started to become really painful. And so then I found this, Patreon platform, and I used that for a while. And then it started to be limiting in what I could do, and I needed some new stuff, and I couldn't find something out there. And so now I went and turned and looked to build something of my own.
Absolutely. You guys have a really cool case study on your website for a company called Become Unmistakable, and it's called the UMAP. Can you guys talk a little bit about, that's probably a pretty good example of a pretty custom process, also uses a lot of coaching and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that has to do with what we're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So Become Unmistakable came to us a couple of years ago, and this was really born out of a construction company here in the West Michigan area called E&V. And they had this sort of unique process for how they managed their team internally, and how they connected and related to them, which is this tool called the UMAP. And within their own team, it was a very manual process, right? They had a couple page sort of Word document survey that they would send out to everybody and fill out. And then they'd have someone in their marketing team manually create these, 11 by 17 visual UMAPs for everybody on the team. So it's a very time consuming and manual process to pull it all together. And they would typically update those at least once a quarter. So once a quarter, they'd have to refill those things out and have someone create all of those. And so they, after they wrote their book called Become Unmistakable, they wanted to bring that product to the market at large. And so the idea and the concept is fairly straightforward to bring to people, but the actual ability to produce these things and produce a lot of them for a company is a pretty painful and manual process without this tool. And so that was their focus. How can we make this something that anybody who wants to take advantage of this can sign up, fill out some simple questions online, and out pops this really great looking UMAP with all this information in it. And so that was a place where we helped them say, let's take this idea, this thing you've been doing in a very manual way for a while internally at your own company, and couple it with the book that you wrote to launch it out to the market at large in a way that's really simple and easy for them to take advantage of.
Right. There's that thing again of scalability.
Yep.
Yeah,
Totally.
and become unmistakable is a good example of when we talked about some people like having content and process or a combination of, and that's one that's definitely a combination. Like where the sweet sauce is with BU is they have this a lot of content that focuses on why it's important to connect with your employees with this like right-brained approach, but they also have and not only is this important and here's some content to tell you why, here's the process we've implemented in order to actually bring that to your organization. And that process involves the custom, the software to be able to engage employees in that way and take them through that process in a scalable way, like you mentioned.
Right. So, Laura, I know that all of these are completely, they're very different depending on what the problem is or what the expertise they're trying to get across is, but it sounds like there are some common threads of kinds of features that people are either requesting or that you're finding will solve certain problems. Can you talk a little bit about some of the features that you guys have found yourself, doing a lot or developing a lot?
Yeah, like you said, there's definitely a unique set for everybody of what they're looking for, but I think some of the common things we see, so some form of like content organization and custom delivery, right? So one would be, and I don't just mean, hey, we have all this content, we just need to like push this content to everybody, but things like, hey, based on XYZ, I'm going to feature this content to this person. So maybe you took a self-assessment or you completed certain tasks and now you're ready for this next piece of content. So some sort of content organization and custom delivery of that content. Another thing we see a lot is while these tools, sometimes they are 100% virtual, other times they are part of driving people to either, physical get-togethers or during COVID times, Zoom get-togethers. So we'll see integration of ability to schedule events or to easily join events. So those might be Zoom conferences, they might be one-on-one calls with a coach. It might be group meetings with other participants that are going through that same experience.
But building community, basically.
Yeah, so building a community. And so in that space, the other thing we often see is just multiple users that have different ways that they're going to use the app, right? We have participants, we have coaches or teachers or facilitators, that type of thing. So based on that and based on building community, like you just said, Aaron, there's usually some level of communication, whether that's one-on-one messaging, group messaging, discussion boards, announcement boards. You often see, the app has some way for the facilitators and participants to communicate to each other. And then I think the last thing that immediately comes to mind, and I'm sure there's some I'm forgetting, but is some unique experience that's on top of all that content, right? So this is where, so for example, one of the projects that we're talking about right now, they are structuring their content in weekly lessons. And these weekly lessons will have like 8 to 10 weekly lessons. Each weekly lesson has, on the first day, you'll take a self-assessment. Then you're served with content based on where you fall on that self-assessment. Then you'll join a live event. Then you will follow up with conversation with the community to talk about what you learned during that live event. So like that process is put on top of all of that. Or when you think about fitness, some of the fitness stuff that we've worked with, you see coaches wanting the ability to like create a challenge, and that challenge isn't always the same thing. It might be a weight loss challenge, a fitness challenge, hey, we want to drive blood donation challenge, whatever that is, right? So like putting some of those unique experiences that shape the way the content is distributed and the way that the customers interact with the content.
Yeah, and maybe just to build on what Lori says, it sounds like what the real objective is for some of these companies is personal growth, right? So it's not always based on objective numbers of here's how many people I reached, here's how many people took my lessons, here's how many people showed up. It's like we're taking touch points as we go through to see if the people that are using the product are being changed in some way. So for fitness, that they're getting stronger, that they're able to, that they feel healthier, that they're having better, relationship wise with other people because they feel better. Like those are things that are harder to measure, but like are really the important part, the human part. Hey, mutually human. Hey, go figure. But the human part of, what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, BU was like that too, right? Like it was about structuring what are your 1 year, 2 year, 3 year goals and helping you measure. The other thing, and I don't know if this is much personal growth, but Grace is a good example of this, where they have experts that are able to help people. And so creating an app to connect those people that are seeking. So Grace provides consulting on elder care, caring for elder or vulnerable people that need help caring. So, being a caretaker is really challenging. And
I need help caring.
I mean, you definitely need help caring. So does Mark. No, but if you're a caretaker, it's a big, overwhelming task. And so the Grace application that we're working with that team to build is all about connecting these experts that can help people that are in those situations. So and they have a lot of content, and there is a process, but that also introduces a third thing I didn't really think about, which is just like, connecting experts in that consulting world versus like distributing content or process on top of it.
Yeah, well, I'm not a developer, but I work with a ton, especially I work a lot of times in UX environments similar to you, Lori. So one thing that I've seen when I'm dealing with people is that they kind of tend to want to put this into the website environment. They go, well, okay, I'm going to put some requirements for this website, and it's like 19 pages long of all the things I want it to do. And a lot of them start looking like, and then we want chat, and then we want people to log in this state. And what they don't necessarily realize, this is a little bit of a gray area, is that a lot of times there are marketing websites. And then at a certain point, you transfer over to what really is a cloud application. You really can't tell the difference in the fact that it might be the website. And a lot of times I had to explain that to people. Can you talk a little bit about, when is it that somebody should stop thinking in terms of adding features to their website? And it's like, no, really, guys, you need to make this into an actual piece of software.
I think a big piece of that is going to be when they have to start knowing things and remembering things about their users. I think that's a good key to it, right? Like if their customers or constituents need to log in and have an account and be able to interact with content and save where they are and submit their own information back. I think you're starting to get into application land. If the experience is really the same thing for everybody, and there's no need to lock it behind a paywall or anything like that, I think a website's fine. But once you start needing to tailor the experience to the individual that's actually doing it, and start introduce payment and stuff like that, I think that's where you start to make that shift.
Yeah, I'd agree with Mark there too. And I'd also be cautious, Josh, you mentioned about keep piling on features and stuff. You have to be very sure that the features you're adding are worth the time and the effort of implementing them. And so for instance, I would argue that MailChimp, as an example, is typically a unidirectional type of communication mechanism, right? But something like what Lori was talking about, where you've got coaches and stuff, you need it to be bidirectional, but you need to really be able to pull your users to know what's the best way that most people are going to respond? Is it going to be an email communication? Is it going to be a chat communication? Is it going to be some kind of Slack channel kind of thing? And then build off of that and just slowly grow that. So rather than just jumping into something and you're not even sure if it's the right solution.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked a little bit about scaling your business. What are some of the effects, if you guys can speak to this, that people would start being able to notice if they build this kind of application? What's some of the ROI that they can expect? I know some of it would be financial, but what are some other advantages to doing these kind of things?
I think time is a huge advantage. I think one of the things that a lot of these people are doing today is spending a lot of their time directly serving their customers. And I think one of the things that moving this direction, not just the software, but even the idea of taking your knowledge and repackaging it and delivering it in a different way can give you is your time back, that you're not having to spend your time one-on-one with every single person, and your income doesn't have to be tied one-on-one to the number of hours you're able to produce. And you're able to sort of break that out into something that can, produce revenue for you while you sleep, and can give you some time to invest in those bigger, more strategic next things, rather than spending all your time just delivering the thing you've created today.
Yeah, it gives you a chance to refocus. Sorry, Larry, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was going to say, yeah, it gives you a chance to kind of refocus on what's important with your business. And so I agree with Mark there. That's a great point.
Yeah.
And also it also prevents you from, a lot of people, when they talk about scaling, they scale with a team, right? So they're having to hire more and more people. But if you're able to package up your content in a way that's easily distributable through your app or through your website or however you do it, you might be able to hold off a little bit on building your team.
Mm-hmm. The other ROI that came to mind while you guys were talking is the ability to deliver your product consistently with the quality you're looking for, right? So if, again, just back to the real manual side, and you have these, different teachers going around, there's potentially a really inconsistent delivery of your product, right? When you start to build it in custom software in a way that now has a really good structure, that's not to say that people still aren't adding their own touches, and the way people are interacting is still really amplifying that, but it provides a structure and a process around that you can really rely on, that you're delivering a quality product to every customer.
Yeah, consistency.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep. So if someone, let's say I am a consultant, or I do training for enterprise organizations, and I'm traveling all the time. I can only meet with a certain amount of clients, and I understand what you're talking about, but I have no idea what the very next step would be. What should somebody do if they're in that situation? I have a successful business, but it's completely service based, and I know I need to scale. What do I do?
I mean, call Mark.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like a lot of our conversations start out as, hey, let's hop on the phone for 30 to 60 minutes and have a conversation about what your challenges are, right? I'm happy to talk with folks about sort of where they're struggling in their business and how we may be able to help. And if building something is the way out of that problem, awesome. I'm happy to help direct them down that path. If saying, hey, go look at Patreon or any of these other various off-the-shelf tools are really the right next step for you, I'll direct you in that way as well. Because I don't for us, it's important that the people that we work with are successful. It does no good for us or for them if we have them try to go spend a bunch of money and build a big custom software thing, which is not what they need. Mm-hmm. And so we're really about trying to find the right solution for them, even if that solution isn't go build a piece of software today.
Right. Well, and I think something that we don't necessarily harp on enough is, and we could probably do a whole episode on this, but is the MVP. It's minimal viable product, which is the idea that there is the smallest version of your product that has the essence of it, that kind of can get people using it. And because usually when you have a vision of, well, this is what I need it to be, I mean, you could be spending a lot of money and have no idea how somebody's going to use it. So having something that's like the very first version of it, just to see how people would use it, is usually a good way to go. And that might even be a better way to go than trying to kind of hack something together with 19,000 WordPress plugins and your cousin doing it. It's like there's only so far you can get because it wasn't made for that. Where you could start saying, like, this is the smallest version of this feature, and this is how we're going to grow it over time with a plan. So it's a smart way to do it. And I know that Josh, a lot of your clients have done that.
Earlier you asked a little bit about like when should you move into from using some off-the-shelf stuff and into your own thing. And I think one of the things that you just brought up there is like, what is your customer's experience, right? Like at some point, like, yeah, I can cobble this together with my 19 WordPress plugins or these 3 off-the-shelf things that do different things. But at some point, maybe you can manage it, but the experience for your customers is really a bit rocky. They've got 3 accounts in these 4 places and they're bouncing around between here and there. And it's a bit of a rough experience. And that can be, while you can manage it, can be a pretty detrimental, especially if you're trying to teach them something, can be very detrimental to that experience for them.
If it's detrimental for them,
that may be another good one.
If it's detrimental for them, it means it's going to be detrimental on your time. So like you were saying earlier. So my recommendation is start keeping track in a notepad somewhere. Write down your pain points when you're feeling the pain, because you'll start to see that thing grow. And sometimes your pain points that you experience aren't on a daily basis. It might be on a weekly basis. So you get to Friday and you're like, yeah, I don't think Monday was that bad. But then you get to the next Monday and you're like, oh, here we go again. So write it down and look at it. And that's your gauge,
Yeah, absolutely. I think that in general, people want to try to do things as cheaply as possible, but what they don't necessarily look at is what the best solution is. And it's like, in some cases, it's like there are going to be some influxes of cash that might be needed. And what you don't necessarily look at is like, here are all the cheap decisions I've made over the course of, a year to 2 years to 3 years. And if I had just made this one influx of cash, I probably would have saved all that. So kind of looking at cost opportunities there. Cool. Well, thanks so much for this conversation. I want to point out a resource that we have. It's really based on our own process. It's called the Keq Software Planner. Basically, what it is, it's key questions that you should be asking yourself before you touch any kind of line of code. So as you're thinking about, oh yeah, maybe productizing my expertise is a really good idea, these are the kinds of questions that we would ask you, that we would ask ourselves, and it's really cool. You can like work with it with yourself or with your team, and then we'll even kind of help you review it and kind of go through it and kind of refine it for you in our free consultation. So if you want any more tips like what we're talking about today or what we mentioned in the Keq Planner, you can go to mutuallyhuman.com. And so guys, thanks so much for the conversation. Thanks for dealing with my internet problems today, but this is a really great conversation, and I hope to have some wisdom of my own to share that I could productize one day. So thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you, Josh.
All right. Thanks so much. Thanks so
Yeah.
much for listening to today's episode. As always, feel free to check out mutuallyhuman.com and stay human. Or as opposed to like an alien or something. So, all right. See you later.
See ya.